Hi, what's up everyone? This is Darren Earl from Fast Track Property, where in the last 2 months of 2020 and indeed this year has been a roller coaster ride for all of us. From planning down our New Year's resolution and goals that we'd like to achieve in a year of the rat, to being locked down in our homes, having forced to juggle between our own work and our kids' home-based learning. We are also forced to operate and to learn how to order in food. Many of us started to learn to bake, and we looked on in disbelief as our national airline is being grounded. We read up and try to catch up with all the relief budgets that we can get, especially for business owners because of cash flow. And for those that just started on a new venture, they looked on in confusion and disbelief and they decided to raise the white flag. And many of us show concern for our foreign staff and even doubling our role to a friend and just being their listening ear where they choose to stay on in Singapore instead of by their loved ones even as they await their newborn or even in the case of a death in the family. And with a positive anticipation on the Dow Jones at 28,868 points from the start of the year to today 29,157 points and the STI from 3,252 points to today 2,705 points. It is like the once in the every 10 years opportunity, and there was an influx of new investors jumping on board the bandwagon and getting started on their first trade. We also witnessed homegrown brands shutting their doors and large corporations were not spared either. All of this happening around us while the nation looked on in disbelief to see long queues of people still buying properties. And at this time, many are jumping in to give their expert views on the reason why this is happening. And finally, being so overwhelmed and confused, we just decided to throw our New Year's resolution into the trash and just try our best to comprehend what in the world is happening and what are the opportunities still available. Yes, this kind of summarizes 2020. And at the same time, trying to figure out that, as humans, we pride ourselves that we are logical, but yet we practice the illogical action of taking the lift up first so that we can get down. We continue to drill our kids in their academics so that they can excel, where at the same time we know that most of us do not work in our field of studies, and especially now, we all know that there are so many other ways of making money. Therefore, knowing and doing is not the same. So why am I saying this? This video today is about my fast track property method. And the reason I said all of those is because I'm really surprised that when I meet the various families and individuals during our discussions, they all think I possess some miracle pill like in the movie Limitless, where you take a single pill and you become super smart and able to tap into 100% capacity of your brain for a period of time. Or it is as if I've uncovered some long forgotten scroll of Kung Fu skill to impart to you and magically get you your multiple properties. And if you thought that, I apologize because I honestly do not have that. And if anyone said otherwise, you know who the bigger fool is. So what is fast track property method? Fast track property is a process of planning out a blueprint of taking what you have today that you can maximize, opening up your mind on what you could immediately start to do to generate passive income, and putting more money away to your savings. Revisiting past decisions and learning from its lessons, understanding how and where the money flows in different strategies and structuring of ownership of property. Not forgetting the cash flow that your family needs to commit to monthly and the next few years, and then align it with my 5 pillars of investment, namely entry price, transformation, rentability, exit strategy, financing, and crisis fund. And finally, working together with me to develop this blueprint and guiding you on this journey in the next 3 to 5 to 10 years. All working towards building wealth for you and your family in a low-risk framework that is unique to anyone's and everyone's dreams and desires. And all these possibilities of owning multiple properties in Singapore could start with either playing for your very first property and then multiplying from there, or how to multiply from your present property and resources. And I know I may have upset some of you when you came into a discussion room expecting me to give you a strategy where you thought you could buy a property with no money down. But instead, after I evaluated your situation, I actually recommended you to either start on a real estate hack or even apply for another BTO because you have came up too little too late. And if I did advise you otherwise, it would have meant putting you and your family in a position of too much risk, which I felt would have been too much for you to handle, and the possibility of this ending badly is very high. Therefore, depending on your situation such as income, loans available to you, and your present resources today, it is also not surprising if my recommendation to you is to kick off your fast-track property journey by first crafting out a plan where you could start accumulating more savings and then revisiting this in a year or two. Many of you who have not met your MOP have gotten this advice with me together with the cash flow structure. So how does fast-track property method really work, and what does it really mean in practice, and what goes on behind the scene? Let me take you through an example of how one of the families that is presently still working with me used the fast-track property method to develop a blueprint for themselves. I still remember meeting them back in 2010 when they were in their mid-20s and they were deciding between getting a resale flat or a BTO. And there's really nothing wrong in starting off with a HDB first, especially because at that point, they didn't have the resources to get a condominium. After discussing on their budget, they decided to get a B2 instead, and of course, like most of the couples I have met, they always say this is going to be the first and last house. I'm going to live for the rest of my life here, right? And I can totally understand that because this is the largest purchase in their life at that point and one of the largest commitment too for the next 25 years. Nonetheless, we explored and I told them not to discount the possibility of owning multiple properties in the future and how they could use properties as an asset to create wealth for themselves. I'm glad at the time they chose to listen. And we sat down at the void deck to look first at all the various BTO sites available and decide which is a better one for them because of rentability. Next was to analyze the site plan for that BTO site and selecting the top 5 stacks that they should get. Right? If this is familiar, yes, it is exactly like buying a new launch just before the balloting. We studied the facing, the bin center, the accessibility and the potential future capital gains, and even rentability should they choose to rent the unit out in the future. To all of you out there watching this video, do understand this was in the year 2010. Before most of the real estate measures, therefore there wasn't a need to purchase under a single name. Right? And they were planning at the time to retain their HDB and invest in a second property after their MOP. So during the initial planning stage, we estimated a 1 million future purchase, right? And came up with a detailed fast-track property cash flow plan on how they could set aside 250K for the down payment. At the time, the LTV was still 80%. Well, it took a while, but they finally understood the consequence of using their CPF for their BTO, and therefore, in the next 4 years while waiting to get the keys for their BTO, they saved enough money and paid back all the CPF they used in the first year upon getting their keys, and after that, continue to pay their mortgage in cash, therefore allowing their CPF to grow. I also highlighted the dangers of overindulging in their renovations because more often than not, it is very difficult to get back the money that you have spent in your renovation. And especially so if you're going to be one of those one-of-a-kind designs where they had to find another dam to appreciate in the event they do choose to sell, right? And it's going to be a challenge to get a buyer for the price that they want. Now here comes the bummer. Upon collecting their keys in 2014, all the array of cooling measures has been announced. They called me and asked how they should tweak their plans as they still wanted to aim towards getting a second property. I remember telling them, don't worry, you could still decouple from your HDB and buy another property. So we continued with the plan. Then came 1st April 2016, HDB announced the changes in their decoupling policy. HDB tightens rules of transfer of flat ownership. Right? Previous rules allowed some to avoid paying ABSD. Transfers now granted only under special circumstance. Right? I'll just highlight this for you to take a look. And then at the bottom, previously owners were not bound by such restrictions when transferring your flat or to a spouse or immediate family members, and therefore they could avoid paying the ABSD. Okay? This was a huge setback for them as now we discuss the possibilities of them coming up with the upfront cost if they choose to hold on to their HDB and if it even makes sense. At the time, the ABSD was at 7% and they had to fully pay off their mortgage to enjoy 80% loan for the next property. We also discussed if paying the 7% was worth it. We based on the possibility of renting their place at the time at 1.8K a month which would have taken them about 3.2 years to recover. We further spoke about taxes because then they had to pay the additional income tax for the rental should they choose to rent out the HDB. They decided to work towards the angle of keeping the HDB, and so we readjusted the blueprint to now adding on the additional 7% ABSD and paying off their outstanding loan. And as if it could not get any worse, on the 6th of July 2018, at this time they were already in their early to mid-30s, getting ready for the MOP and looking forward to buying their second property, only to have more measures introduced. The new ABSD has increased to 12%, the LTV lowered to 75%, meaning for this family, it was an additional 10% upfront to hold on to the HDB and a 5.5 years of rental to recover their 12%. And in real terms, it could take another 2 years if you factor in the present value of the rental, right? We met shortly after the announcement to go through their options once again, and finally after discussions, they decided to sell their HDB. They got a profit of 200k, reinvested all these and with their own savings over the years, and especially now having a sizable CPF OA which has compounded over the past 9 years. Today, they are the proud owners of 2 investment properties, 2-bed 1-bath at Park Colonial and Affinity at Serangoon, transforming their portfolio from 450k to 2.2 million. And presently, they are sitting on paper gains profits of 200k. Now, why these 2 condominiums? You'll find that it takes off on all of my 5 pillars of investment. For entry price, they entered at the early 10 to 20 percentile, and the units they bought were priced lower than their immediate competitor project, hence limiting their downside risk while giving them that upside movement. As for transformation, you have already known about the upcoming changes in the Bidadari area and the Cross Island line for Serangoon. For rentability, the present rental in the area is transacting between 2.5 to 3k a month, which could almost cover their mortgage, or they might need to top up about 200 a month. But in real cash flow wise, it will be about 770 a month, getting them a return of $1,116 monthly, therefore giving them an ROI of 59%. As for exit strategy, because of the age bracket, we are planning for capital gains, and at present they are sitting on a 200k paper profits, and we'll be revisiting this again in another year after they complete their SSD period. And finally, for financing and crisis fund, all mortgage installments are paid in cash, and their CPF set aside is doubled up as their crisis fund. That could cover them easily for the next 3 years each. Now guys, can you see? The fast track property method is not a miracle pill or a secret weapon or strategy that I have to impart to you. It is, as I said from the beginning, it is a journey of disciplined planning, together with me guiding you to create that plan for you to own multiple private properties in Singapore in a relatively shorter time frame. And I choose to share with you this example because it is really dramatic and real. And from this, you will notice that plans are not engraved in stones. It has to be flexible. We will revisit it, change it, and improve it as new cooling measures gets introduced or when different challenges present itself to different families. And all the while not losing sight of working towards using property to create wealth for yourselves. I hope that you have enjoyed this video, and if you haven't done so, please help me out, smash the like button, share this video with and bless whoever you think may benefit from it, and remember to subscribe. Speak to you soon.